Hi, my name is Summer, and I am an alcoholic and an addict. Welcome to The Spiritual Life is Not a Theory, part of Big Book Compendium. Thank you so much for everyone being here tonight. If you can't be here in person, we have our recordings on YouTube as well. And tonight we have a special guest with us. His name is Terry F. Because of the Zoom, I've never met him in person, but I've listened and been part of a lot of the meetings and groups that he's been part of as well. I was drawn to his story and to his experience, strength, and hope. And I'm really excited to be able to study the Big Book with him tonight. So, with that being said, Terry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Summer. I appreciate the invite and the intro. It's an honor and privilege to be here. My name's Terry. I'm an alcoholic.
Awesome. Okay. So, we're going to dive right on in. Again, it's XXIX right in the middle. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Terry, what do you have anything to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Um, yeah, this is an awesome paragraph. And I think what just struck me just now, and I'm a big fan of reading the big book without any notes in it so I can have a new experience with the text. And that word suddenly popped up at me, and that's a time frame in our big book, and that's a thread throughout the big book as well. Suddenly also means right here, right now. Also says it in Jim's story where it said, suddenly thought crossed my mind that an ounce of whiskey wouldn't hurt me on a full stomach. And what is happening and more about alcoholism, they give us three characters, Jimmy, Freddie, and who's the other guy? The carpet slipper dude. And they also give us a fictional guy too, but the jaywalker, but they all had an insane thought and they took an action based on that insane thought. And in between that insane thought and that action is a very small space, but occupies a very, very large God. And what I'm doing is I'm building a relationship with that power, which will separate me from drugs and alcohol. And yet again, my forgot to mention my sobriety date is June 1st, 2019, and a miracle happened on that day, everyone. The best way I could describe it is that the gift of desperation screamed louder than the craving that was beyond my mental control. I didn't quit getting high. I was separated. I was separated in this very car, in this very seat, which I
Oh,
love doing, which I love doing talks right here. Did a lot of drinking and drugging in this car. Um, and I'm love to carry the message in this car as well. And suddenly it also you see in our 10th step, it says that as well. I'm sorry, in our ninth step promises, it will say suddenly we realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. That's also a time frame. And that those are all descriptions of what it means to enter into the world of the spirit, which is the ninth step promises. So what I'm doing is I'm building a relationship with right here, right now. And where's God at? God's at right here, right now. And once this psychic change has occurred, it may seem very strange to a lot of people. I'll say about 95. I don't know. That's a random number, I guess. I guess about 5% of the people are in the club within the club here. You know, the people who are being wrecked in the same vessel and restored and united under one God with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others. And there's 95% of people who just want to go to meetings. And that's what they call the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Let me tell you the true definition of insanity. And you guys could write this down. I hope you guys got your pens. Right? The true definition is being part of a 12-step fellowship and not doing the 12 steps. What you doing here? What you doing here? You just hanging out, right? I'm not going to get sober by osmosis. A spiritual awakening is induced by action and by footwork, right? Me putting in actually the effort, not the outcome. I'm not in the outcome business. I'm in charge of the effort business. And it's strange to a lot of people who think that don't drink, go to meetings is the solution. They see me, I'm happy, I'm giddy, I'm talking about this and blah blah blah, and they just don't understand. Come join us, right? If you need a spiritual tour guide, need a spiritual advisor, you want someone to walk hand in hand with this journey with you, I'll show you the way. I'll show you the way. I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, like I used to worship the big book, it's just a book, it's just a theory. Spiritual life is not a theory unless I live it, unless I'm a living demonstration of how it works in this book. If I'm being a living demonstration of the chapters that are in this book, if I'm living a demonstration of the words that are in this book, it's not about learning everyone, it's about becoming. And then when you become this way of life, you start to be this way of life, right? And it's strange to a lot of people. And once this psychic change occurred to me, I mean, it happened. I mean, you could even say that the beginning of it started when I lost control. I mean, I lost control. I mean, I get a call from my wife. She's in the hospital, and she tells me she's got blood clots in her lungs, and her father died of 50 blood clots. Her sister died of 30 blood clots. And you expect a normal husband by her hand, by her side, holding her hand. I got trashed. I got trashed. I mean, I sent out voicemails to people babbling, right? I'm like on 95 going to New Jersey back and forth. I never made it to her. I never made it to her. And then I came to 3 days later and she was home. I lost control, right? And then I started going to AA, and that was my first spiritual experience. It was like, damn, I can't control myself. I lost the ability to choose whether I was going to get high or drunk or not. It's like, what does it say more about alcoholism? We're like men and women who lost their legs and never grow new ones. That's, I think, one of my favorite lines. One of the lines that just stuck out to me in the beginning of recovery. It's like, hypothetically, let's say Stan. Stan's got no legs, he's got no arms. And I asked Stan to stand up, buddy. Hey, stand up. Give me a standing ovation, Stan. Give me a clap, buddy. All right? Hey, what's up with the remote? Can you pass me the? Come on, Stan. Let's go run into the car. You can't. He has no arms and no legs. He's lost the ability to choose whether he could stand up or not. Just same thing with drinking and drugging. I lost control. And this psychic change was happening when I started doing the work, when I started putting pen to paper, and when I started to make my amends. And it happened during the amends process where I was rocketed into the fourth dimension. I was riding a fifth step high, I don't know if anyone knows about that fifth step high. It says the drink problem will, disappear or go away. It's one of my favorite things to ask someone. And after a fifth step, when we start reading the promises, I asked them, "Are you thinking about getting drunk or high?" And every single one of them who has done this work thoroughly, who has put every ounce of effort into it, has answered no. And that was my experience as well. And I balked on 9, and the obsession came back. And then I made these amends and I was rocketed into the fourth dimension. This psychic change started to occur. And it was very strange for a lot of people. I mean, I came back to New York and I remember going into the gym. I used to work in the gym business for quite a long time. And I remember bumping into my old supervisor and he said, "What is up with you? There's something about your eyes, man. You're glowing right now." Right? Kind of like that experience with Ebby, right? I mean, it was just odd. An entire psychic change. If you look up the definition of psychic, it comes from the word psyche, and the word psyche comes from the word soul. So that's what we're having right now is we're having a transformation of mind, body, and spirit. It talks about, and I'll end with this. I want to pass over to you, Summer. In the spirit in the appendix 2 in the back of the book, which explains a spiritual experience. Which if anyone doesn't know what a spiritual experience, go check out 567 in the back of the book. I thought it was some burning bush shit, Oh, I was wrong, right? It was a personality change sufficient to recover from alcoholism, and it talks about this word change a lot throughout that little piece, right? And my opinion, this is my opinion, take it or leave it. Take what you want, leave the rest, right? My opinion, right? I mean, every time they say change, I'm thinking that they're talking about transformation. And what I mean by transformation, look at the cross, the Holy Cross, right? Back in the day, I don't know how many years ago, but maybe you have some historians here that can help me out. Back in the day, the cross was used as a torture tool, was used as a death device to hurt people. Now look at it today. People wear crosses around their necks, right? There's blue cross, there's red cross, right? It had a complete change or transformation in its identity. And that's what we're doing here, everybody, right? We're going back home. We're going back to harmony, back to the fourth dimension right here, right now. I wasn't born. And it was funny. We were reading We Agnostics earlier. I jumped on a meeting, and on page 53 it says when we became alcoholics. I wasn't born a drunk, right? Like I wasn't came out of my womb. Pass me a beer, ma. No, I wasn't like that. I became an alcoholic. I was a potential alcoholic for quite a long time, and then I crossed this invisible line. I don't know when the hell it happened, but I became this alcoholic when I lost the ability to choose whether I was going to drink or not. And when I drank, I always got thirstier. Right? I lost control. Right. All right. That's all I got. Summer, throw it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. That was amazing. It's awesome. I as far as where the psychic change and you brought up about it having to do with our soul, that's amazing. I wanted to read from page 25. Another word or verbiage that's used in the big book is a spiritual experience. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. What are these? They have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. So completely revolutionized our attitude. And then from where you were referring to as well, Terry, on spiritual experience on page 567, you don't have to turn there, but he finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. And then down one more sentence, with few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. So I just wanted to bring that in as well. I loved everything you said, Terry. I'm going to keep reading because you did an excellent job. All right. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I can't go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop. I cannot. You must help me. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. All right, Terry, you have anything?
Oh yeah.
I know you do. Awesome.
Oh yeah, I do. There's just so much in this part. A lot of humility from the doctor. He is talking on behalf of doctors here, and he's gonna, good writers don't repeat themselves. They just don't, right? And then good writers don't capitalize words in the middle of sentences. But this doctor is going to continuously repeat over and over again that we have done jack for alcoholics and addicts, right? We have done nothing. We have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehab of these men and women than the altruistic movement coming about them. Now it says it again, right? It says, we doctors, what did it say? We must admit we made a little impression on the problem as a whole. We haven't done anything. The doctor's opinion is telling that we are effed. We're screwed. It said the word doomed right above that. Don Pritz's definition of doom means I'm walking around in a body that won't die, I'm carrying a mind that won't work, and I'm still breathing. I am doomed, right? And but he's saying time out, time out. These guys who I'm observing, who are just telling each other stories and helping each other out in an altruistic fashion, these people are recovering. These people have been recovered, you could say. And it says necessary only being that we required a few simple rules. Which are the steps? I mean, you could break that down into multiple things. Few simple rules: trust God, clean house, up rules, requirements. It doesn't sound like suggestions to me. Does it sound like suggestions to you?
No.
No, it doesn't. Right? Mm-hmm. There's requirement. The only requirement for membership is to the fellowship, to actually go to a meeting. which is a pretty broad term anyway, right? But what it's talking about, there's requirements to the mind. And we went to page 25. It said almost none of us like the self-searching, leveling our, none of us like doing the steps. I said, my opinion, I hated it. It went against everything I've ever believed in. It went against all my old ideas. It goes against all my old emotions. It goes against the grain on everything. And if you're new here, right, and I recommend, this is probably the most effective thing that I ever used in the beginning of recovery, my first 30 days. Do the opposite of whatever you don't want to do. Right? I don't feel like going to a meeting. What's the opposite of that? Go to a meeting. I don't feel like calling my spons. Call your spons. I don't feel like writing this pesky inventory. I mean, it took me 2 weeks to draw the lines, and then it took me 45 minutes to knock it out, right? Write your inventory, right? I don't feel like making those amends. They're scary. They are scary. They are scary. Go make the amends. You're looking at someone who had some scary amends, and I'm still breathing today. I'm still here, right? Almost none of us like doing it. I spoke on page 25 for like a good 6 months. I went on a binge with that with that page, right? And I had 2 people say, I love doing the steps. And I'm like, oh, really? I tried grabbing them, and one got away from me. And I asked him, hey, man, can I ask you a few questions? He's like, shoot. I'm like, did you ever commit a crime? He said, yes. And I asked him, did you ever get away with that crime? He said, yes. And then I said, did you ever make amends for that crime or make restitution or pay that whatever back? And he said, no. And here's the ding, 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 bing, bing, bing question. Are you willing to make amends for that crime that you got away with? And you know what he said? Hell no. And I said, welcome to the club, bro. Welcome to the club. This goes against everything. Everything. One of the most powerful spiritual experiences that I've ever felt is immense pain and anguish and turmoil right before I do something that I really, really don't want to do. And you know why that's why that's happening is because the alcoholic ego is fighting for its life. It literally is. It talks about on our third step, we're going to be reborn. That means something's got to die. That means something's got to die. Right? And it's fighting, baby. I mean, shit. My mind was cuckoo for a long time, especially when I stopped making my amends. And I thought about offing myself off, man. I thought talks about that later in the chapter. We would rather commit the supreme sacrifice rather than continue the fight. Man, I felt like killing myself. Problem was, I was trying to kill the wrong self. I was trying to kill the wrong self. In this process of the 12 steps, it gets us back to harmony, and it's the death to the ego. And here's the bad news, though. It resurrects really fast. It recuperates really fast. It regroups really fast. It gets spiritual really fast, right? Mr. AA sponsor comes out of nowhere, a little stage character I got. Mr. AA convention speaker pops in for a few, right? Man, I remember I spoke at a conference in St. Louis, and then, man, I crushed it, Summer. I crushed it. Man, that was love, applause, moments of sublime. I was loving it. I was walking on water over here. And then afterwards, this couple comes up to me. One guy's like, hey, man, I love that shit. I'm like, no problem, man. I appreciate you, blah, 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 right? Just loving it, loving it. And you know what the wife said? I love your sermon out there. And I was like, what'd you say? What'd you say? Why was I hurt, threatened, or interfered with? It was because the recuperative powers of the ego came back in a different face, and which was the spiritual man. And I would have never, ever guessed where that came from unless I written inventory. I mean, people say, look, I'm living in steps 10 and 11 and 12. That's an easier, softer way, man. My book says a business which takes regular inventory usually goes broke. Man, I do it maybe once every 2 years. I go through the steps. Usually I do it when I take people through the steps. I do it myself, right? Because I'm not the same cat I was 5 years ago. I'm just not. I'm not even the same cat I was yesterday, right? A spiritual experience has an expiration date. I have to grow and maintain this spiritual experience, this psychic change, this moral psychology, whatever you want to call it, right? That's all I got. Sorry, Summer. I went on a babble there.
No, this is great. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. So I'm also going to read from page 27, where it's another way of describing the spiritual experience. Here and there, once in a while. So we're talking about, well, I'll just read. Okay. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. What are these? To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side. Suddenly. And a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. In fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangements with you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. The real alcoholic, the real drug addict. He says he's really never been successful with an alcoholic of our description. And I like also, like with Dr. Silkworth is writing here, like you can see his humility, and you can see that, you know, he realizes that he does not have the actual answer yet. Like he does not understand, while these revolving doors in a, you know, where he worked in Towns Hospital, that these people are coming in, and there's certain people that drink the same as us or use the same as us, they don't come back, right? But there's others that just, which I'm going to say for me, just keep coming and coming. And there's something different about us, right? We talked about this last week. There's something different. But the good news is, one feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Thank God it's more, it's bigger than the human power. It's bigger than the power of alcoholism. I need to find a power greater than myself and my selfish ways, and a power greater than the alcohol and drugs that I used as my solution. I have to find a power that's greater than that. And we have being hopeless in this program is good news, because then we have hope. If we're really hopeless, then we're at a place where pain, you know, pain comes with being hopeless. It's what drives us to the solution. It, you know, pushes us there. All right, I'm going to keep reading. Bottom of XXIX. I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I have had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date, favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. Terry.
Yeah, what stuck out to me was, you know, it says on 44, what does it say? What does it say on there? It says, if you, when honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely the obsession, or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. Now, I'm an and, not an or. And this puts into perspective about the or over here to me. I've always kind of looked at this line like, what are they talking about? Alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. Well, they're talking about this physical factor of alcoholism. When I take a drink, the drink takes me, right? Do I identify with this allergy, this phenomenon of craving when I get thirstier whenever I drink? I just want more, right? And I get accidentally drunk all the time. You know, the first step of getting out of jail is knowing that you're in jail in the first place, right? I remember I read the doctor's opinion with a cat, and you know, he didn't believe that he was an alcoholic, and he went to the bar to try some controlled drinking. Go ahead, go try some, right? And then he went over there, he took a drink, right? He was like, that son of a bitch, Terry doesn't know what he's talking about. This is how he said it to me. That SOB doesn't know what he's talking about. And then he took another, then he took another, then he took another, then he took another, and he's like, damn it. That SOB Terry was right. When I drank, I got thirstier. It set off a craving that was beyond my mental control. Now, my experience with the craving was I look back at it, you know, this is a lot of things are fuzzy for me for a long time, right? There's a lot of people, on this, you could say it's a spectrum or whatever, who are allergy dominant and who are obsession dominant. I'm both. All right. I drank for 20 years, right? And I was able to jump from a different drug back to alcohol, back to this, back there. That's why I had such a difficult time admitting powerlessness, because I was switching from one substance to another. Right. But when I look back at my life, when I go through the allergy to see, am I the real alcoholic, right? Like this book says. I mean, when I take people through the book, it's not like keeping it fresh or keeping it green for me. I'm just solidifying my foundation that's found on page 17 of our book, our common problem, right? Our common peril. And I'm literally looking at that. I remember taking a drink 7 hours prior to a wedding, and I ended up in a different state. Like, I didn't anticipate ending up in a different state, which was New Jersey, which is not far from me, right? But if someone who has no money and who had to get off the exit and beg people for change so they could get over the GWB, which the GWB is $16. I think it's 18 now, but $16 back then when I did that, that's a lot of money to beg for. And you know what I told my wife? I told my wife that I couldn't make that wedding because I got hit by a car. And she didn't see me for a couple days, right? Do I suffer from this craving that's beyond my mental control? And I look back at it, I was both, but I felt more obsession dominant later. And that happened to me because I wasn't convinced I was a real alcoholic. It happened to me when I went to a detox with these big book guys. Big book guys. Ding, 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 big book guy, spiritual guys, thumper guys, my people, right? And I go to there, there's all drug addicts there. And I was like, oh, cool, man. I tell my drug addict story. Why not? Right. I get singleness of purpose and all that stuff, but I felt it was, the right thing to do. Everyone's a drug addict. Told my drug addict story. And afterwards, I'm eating dinner at this place called Carlos. They got great steak, by the way, there. and we're eating there. And the guy leans over to me. He's like, Terry, I'm concerned you're not a real alcoholic. That's what he said to me. And I was like, oh, what'd you say? And when I drink, I get thirstier every single time. When I look back in my life, every time I drank, I got thirstier. I wanted more. I lost control. Right? I didn't anticipate that I was going to just go in. I thought I was just going to go in for one or two, and then all of a sudden, I'm rocking and rolling, going down to Atlantic City. I'm going all out. Right? I'm like, Bill's story is literally my story. Bill plagiarized his story from me, man. Right? Bedevilments, that's me. Dr. Bob's story, shoosh, that's my story to the T. What are you talking about? And I'm walking away, angry, of course. And you know what I said? I said, maybe he's right. That's what I said. I said, maybe he's right. I'll tell you something about a reservation, everyone. It's if it's back in the back of your mind right now, one day you're gonna get so angry. You're gonna get so pissy because you're gonna get angry. 10 step says when. It doesn't say if these things crop, it says when these things crop up, right? Like we ask God to remove them. They're coming, baby. I can't control my thoughts, they just come. Right. And when I'm angry, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna be so pissed off, I'm gonna stub my toe on the door and I'm gonna think drink solution, drink answer. Right. I'm just gonna go right there. I even go darker. I think suicide solution, suicide answer when I go into dark mode over here. Right. And I literally I was riding that fifth step. I was telling you guys that earlier, and I'll wrap up after this. I was riding that fifth step high, man. That high. It was a good high. I had alcohol in my home, everybody. I was serving it to people. I was placed into a position of neutrality. I was placed, but it's easy to let up on a program of action. Try practicing that death threat. I did. It's a great death threat to practice, right? And what happened, I couldn't even walk by the booze. I couldn't walk by it. I had tequila. I could taste tequila on my mind. And you know what was going through my mind, Stan? This is what I was saying to myself I would say probably every 15 minutes of every hour for 3 weeks straight. This is what I was saying. Terry, why don't you step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking? Try it once. Try and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. I kept saying it over and over and over and over and over in my head. And I called my sponsor, told him what's going on. He said, did you make your amends? I'm like, no. What are you, Baby Yoda over there, bro? It's like, maybe you need to make your amends. And then I made this amend that was really scary. Found out it wasn't, because 9 out of 10 times the unexpected happens. I mean, I'm expecting that this scenario is going to go away, but it ain't going to go the way that I think it's going to go. And I was rocking it right into the fourth dimension after that. And I start making all these approaches, and out of nowhere, I was like, damn. I just remember, I remember sitting on the side of my bed. I was like, I'm not dreaming about getting drunk. I'm not even thinking about getting drunk. I'm not even fantasizing about it. It's not whispering in my ear. It's not calling my name. I suddenly realized that God was doing for me what I wasn't doing for myself. I mean, I did the work and God worked on me. Our third step talks about that. It says to build with me. With means participation from me. I do the work, God works on me. I'm not in charge of the outcome, I'm in charge of the effort. Right? That's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. Yeah, I love everything you said, Terry. The phenomenon of craving, just wanted to comment a little bit on that. It's not so much a phenomenon anymore, right? Like when this was written back in 1939, it was unknown really what happened with the allergy, and we didn't know exactly how it affected us, the physical. And now we have all this information up to page 23, touches on the physical allergy. But now, like, it's not even so much a phenomenon. It's we know, and it's been proven, and AMA agrees with us, agrees with the Real Alcoholic, that it's a craving that is paramount to any other thing, a crying child, a divorce, whatever. I mean, like Terry said, I woke up in I woke up in the Bahamas, came to in the Bahamas on a cruise, like, how did I afford this? Right. And I've also had, situations where I could have had my children back in my care, but I didn't choose. I'm sorry. I ended up drinking or using right before I should have been there, trying to get my kids back right then and there. And, it's because there's this phenomenon of craving, and it becomes way bigger than any other interest. I mean, our children, our family, they are so important to us, but frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. Them nagging or just them in general, it seldom suffices for the real alcoholic. All right, I'm going to continue on XXX and talk about the 5 types. All right, there are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. The classification of alcoholics seem most difficult, and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We are all familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over remorseful and making many resolutions, but never a decision. 2, there is a type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. There is a type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. There is the manic depressive type who is perhaps the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written. Then there are types entirely normal in every respect except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people. That's you and I, Terry, right? We're this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just about to say that's me, baby. I don't realize. I mean, we have a prayer. You guys said earlier it's called the set aside prayer, lay aside prayer, which is a very I say a critical and one of the most important prayers I could give to anyone. And it's asking me to lay aside everything I think I know, so I may have a ... and an open mind and a new experience with ... Why do I need to lay aside everything I think I know? Because I think I know everything. And what that means is I'm driven by self-delusion when I come in here, and I don't even know it. I literally do not even know it. And when I read that line, I'm able, intelligent, friendly people, that's me, right? That's me. That's like the hook that got me. I'm like, yep, that's me. But let's look at that through a different pair of glasses. Let's look at through a different angle. This is what my sponsor did to me. He's like, well, Terry, when you were drinking, were you able? I'm like, no. Were you intelligent? I was a dumb when I was drinking. Terry, when you were drinking, were you friendly? Yeah, but I became a tornado and a tsunami afterwards. I'm like, so that ain't you, bro. Well, Terry, when you were drinking, were you a psychopath? Like, yeah, oh yeah, I was a psychopath. Well, Terry, when you were drinking, were you emotionally unstable? Yes, I was. Well, Terry, when you were drinking, were you manic depressive? Yeah. I don't see that when I come in here. That's why it's so important to get to get linked up with someone who is armed with the facts, meaning they took the steps and they know the medical facts about alcoholism, who have a working knowledge of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, who could be your spiritual tour guide, who can make this book come alive and talk to you. Because I could read this book all day about the first 100 and how boring they are. They got pretty cool stories, right? But if I take statements and I turn them into questions and considerations, the book starts to talk to me personally. It starts to become a book of mirrors. I'm literally looking back at myself, right? Yep, that's all I got, Summer. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. I love that. The questions, turning them into questions, that really makes the big book come alive. And I think, like you just said, I know for me, I'm all of these, especially when I have untreated alcoholism or when I'm in active addiction. This is me. This is just entirely me. And I don't have much else to say. I think you explained that wonderfully. So I'm going to keep moving on. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence.
Yeah, just don't
Take
drink,
it away.
right?
Yeah.
Just don't drink.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. Right? What did Mark Houston say? Is if it's just don't drink, then the big will be 1 page and 3 words. Just don't drink. Right? How easy is that for me to say that? If I could tell myself not to drink, then I wouldn't even be on this call. I wouldn't even be here. You know? It says all these have one symptom in common, is that I have this phenomenon of craving. Now it's a medical fact, but I have a craving, right? Or I want to drink more, or I want to use more whenever I put a substance into me. This was separates us and puts us into a distinct entity, and I love to do when I see distinct entity. I love going to page 21. And I love talking about the moderate drinker, the hard drinker, and the real alcoholic, right? Can I take a drink and leave it alone? Like, no, I can't. You could. This is a great qualifying question. If you're a new sponsor here, you want to find out if there are the real alcoholic, or if you're satisfied you're a real alcoholic. Because I've come across a lot of people who are not, who are not in this program. Right. This is a great question. I mean, can you take it or leave it or not? I mean, if someone takes half a shot in front of me, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, give that to me. Right. Well, what about a hard drinker? A sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, or change of environment? These cats could stop and moderate. Man, I had a doctor point blank tell me to my face, Terry, you will die if you ever drink again. Because I had 5 bypass open heart surgery because I was drinking and using the white witch, cocaine, right? my 2 babies, my 2 love affairs, right? And I had a doctor point blank tell me, but there I was, all lit up again, right? But what is the qualifier? That real alcohol, right? Where did I lose? I lost all control once I put liquor and put it into my system. When I read the description on 21, and we don't have to go over it, but I mean, this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, he becomes dangerously and even disgustingly, even antisocial. He builds up a bright future for himself and then tears it down with a few sprees or whatever spree. He's a person that goes to bed. This is one of the lines that hooks me. I'm like, oh snap, that's me, right? He goes to bed so intoxicated, I go to bed so intoxicated that I ought to sleep the clock around, right? It's just sleep all day, right? But early, early every single morning, I search madly for the bottle I misplaced before. That was me to the T. And I was like, oh my God, like that's me. And then I read, someone gives me the first promise in the book, which is on the title page of our big book, which is the story of how many thousand men and women who have recovered from alcoholism. And that's actually a subtitle. That's what my friend who was taught by a librarian, he taught me that. That's a subtitle of our book, which says the word recovered is actually in our title of our book, by the way. I didn't know that until a librarian taught my friend that, right? But I have the ability to be recovered in a recovered state. And just like the first 100 men and women, or more like 80, whatever, Bill like to exaggerate the truth, but these guys were me. Like they were me. I felt like God was reading my story all throughout this. And I'm like, you know what? And I had a sponsor that beat the poop out of me with step one, beat the poop out of me to the point like, okay, I'm open-minded for step two. I mean, he literally asked me, Terry, do you believe there's a power greater than yourself? I'm like, no, back up, bro. Don't even talk to me about that. Back up. And he said, okay, Terry, are you even willing to believe there's a power greater than yourself? I'm like, yeah, man. Shit. I'm in Minnesota right now. I don't even know where I'm at in Minnesota. I'm in treatment out here, right? I'm willing to do whatever. And my sponsor, you know what he said? Congratulations, you just completed step two. Pew, pew, pew. He didn't see the pew pews. I just made that up. All right, Summer, kick it back to you.
All right. That was excellent. Thank you. I think that we all have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. I also think sometimes that we all act and look and seem differently, but this is it comes down to this, but it may like mask itself in different ways. Like, you know, I may act out in a certain way while I'm drinking after the phenomenon of craving kicks in, and Terry may act out in a different way or end up in a different state, but we still have the same thing in common. And that's the fact that once a substance comes into our body, we break out in a craving for more. It's more, more, more. And one is like one, we want one, and two, we want two more, and we want three even more, and four even more. And so I think sometimes it's deceiving to really, really qualify and really understand the real alcoholic. But we can qualify ourselves, and our sponsors can help us with that. All right, I'm going to keep reading. This will be our, I'll keep reading. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. You want to go, Terry?
Yeah, that's his opinion. And
yeah.
we're screwed. We're screwed. I mean, his opinion also says on the last word of this chapter is to pray. That's his opinion. Like you're screwed. Like if I'm reading this to some new guy or whatever, I'm trying to beat the poop out of them. Right? I'm trying to get them as depressed and hopeless as possible. And then I hit them with what is the solution, which is the next page. All right. So.
All right. What is the solution? We're on page XXXI. Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him, there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger. And so he left me, A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. Terry?
Hey, no, well, the first thing I like is the doctor's giving an experience, not an opinion. Giving an experience on a person, an actual person. Shit, I forgot his name. He wrote to
Hank?
employer Hank Parker's,
Hank
yeah, Hank
Parker,
P.
yeah.
Hank, yeah, Hank P. Right? Who is
Mm-hmm.
should be if he didn't drink, he would be our co-founder. Him and Ebby, but they both drank. Don't sleep on the chapter to employers, man. To employers is some good stuff, especially helps with sponsorship. And shit, I mean, it literally says on page 19 of our book, a much more important demonstration of our principles, which are our steps, our lives before us, our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. And in there, in order for a particular reason, if I'm not demonstrating these steps at home, I'm not going to have a home. Drunk or sober, that's my experience. I almost divorced my wife twice. You know, if I'm not demonstrating these principles at work, I'm not going to have a job. I mean, I called my boss a clown and I got fired. And thank God I made amends to him and he hired me back. All right. If I'm not demonstrating these principles in all my affairs, I'm going to collide with you. All right. I'm going to be asleep, walking around thinking I'm awake. I'm going to step on your toes. You're going to retaliate. I'm going to get pissy. I'm going to say, how dare you? And then I'll go to self-pity and bury myself like in quicksand. I'll think drink solution, drink answer. There's 75 pages dedicated to step 12, pages 89 to 164. Read them, study them, make them a way of life. Please, please. And I love it. And this paragraph talks about the 4 stages of recovery. First stage is no hope. No hope, right? And if you're working with new people and they got some hope out there, right? Oh no, I got this. Usually with high bottoms, high intellect people, outright mental defectives, they give me a fun time. I sponsored a guy with schizophrenia. He was fun, man. So Marty, I see you, Marty. Marty, he was fun, bro. You know, like it's difficult to beat the poop out of people. I can't teach step 1 to someone. That's an experiential step. That's something that I can't teach you pain. I can't teach you your ass kicking, you could say. That's an experience you have to have in yours alone, right? I can't duplicate it for you, right? But the first stage is no hope, meaning I can't stay stopped. The second stage is the elimination of alcohol, detox, right? I need a detox because if someone approached me and I'm still like shaking, right? And they're trying to read to me the real alcoholic. I'm not going to hear any of that. I'm just going to hear blah, 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 booze. I'm not going to hear anything. Make sure that these people have sufficient detox before we approach them. I mean, look at your own experience. When you're on day 1 or 2 in detox, are you thinking about how many people you can help? No, that's not my experience. I'm just drenched in self-pity. Like I am, it is a carnival in his head that's talking very, very loud, right? And then what about the third stage? The third stage, which is, it says, accepted the plan that's outlined in this book. So I like to say surrendered or concede to the plan that's outlined in this book. And that's the most difficult one, right? And why is that? I mean, it's because I had ADD, Summer. I have alcoholic defiance disorder. Yeah, I have defied everything. I mean, I literally have until I got my step 1 experience. I'm so it's an intuitive. It talks about fear. Fear in our book is my thing. I think they're talking about is mental anxiety, right? But with fear is the highest form of human intelligence. Kurt Z talks about that. And like if I see a car and it, coming my way, I jump out. That's fear, right? I jump out of the way, right? I have an intuitive thing that's inside of me that's scared shitless to ever get drunk and high again. So I come down to my 2 options: either do the work or drink again. That's my experience. I can't teach you that, right? I can't do that for you, right? But when I do the things that I really don't want to do, get that tattooed on your arm. Do the opposite of whatever you don't want to do, right? Just get it tatted on there, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden you start watching your life change. You start making these approaches, you start writing inventory, you start helping other people, and all of a sudden something will happen. From a nervous, despairing wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I have become in a recovered state. a recovered alcoholic, a recovered addict. It means I've been restored to soundness of mind. I've been restored to usefulness. Like the big book will define a word for you if you allow it to define a word for you, right? The big book defines the word recovered as being recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, right? And if you do these steps, if you pick up that simple kit of spiritual tools that are laid at your feet, right? And you do the things that really make you feel super uncomfortable, your life will become absolutely indescribably wonderful. I mean, shit, my life is beyond my wildest dreams, and my dreams are pretty wild. Just kidding. All right, Summer, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. I'm going to keep reading and we'll finish off with to the end of doctor's opinion. All right. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and, deciding his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment a waste of effort, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology, and we doubted if even that would have an effect. However, he did become sold, quote unquote, sold on the ideas contained in this book. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is as fine a specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. Take it away, Terry.
Yeah, it is a great story. You know, I sponsor someone who's a great grandson of Fitzhugh, man. He's out here. What's up, bro? This is Fitzhugh Mayo. He was also our Southern friend, and also his story is in the chapter We Agnostics. And yet again, I'll keep it really quick. I know we're running out of time, but 4 stages of recovery, right? Hopeless. Number 1, physical rehabilitation, detox. And the third one became sold on the ideas contained in this book, right? Do the damn work. And the fourth one, that recovered state, right? As a fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. And what I love right here is that this is what the doctor is saying. I earnestly advise every person, alcoholic, drug addict, whatever, read this damn book, right? Just don't read it just one time. Read it more than once. I mean, people ask me all the time, they tell you, hey, you could quote the book so good, blah, blah, blah. It's yet again. I I know the book very well because I read it out loud to a lot of people many, 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 many times. It just becomes a working part of my mind. I'm a living demonstration of the words in this book. I used to worship the book back in the day. Now I don't. I try to live and actually do what it says in this book. All right. That's all I got, guys. Yet again, this is an honor and a privilege, and this was so much fun. I want to kick it back over to you, Summer. Thank you.
All
And pew,
right.
pew, pew, pew.
Pew pew. Thank you, Terry. That was wonderful. And I think we're gonna wrap it up because it's 9:00, but we will open up the chat for questions. I mean, you can raise your hand as well. I'm gonna stop the recording and this will not be recorded. But Terry, thank you so much for spending your Friday night with us.